Welcome to B&W Insights. I'm your host, Mark Seifert, and on today's episode, we have two amazing guests who just got back from a trip to Germany where they looked at water and wastewater, the technology, the future of the industry across the world and Europe, but they didn't bring me back any sauerkraut. Ready? Let's get started. Carolyn, Melissa, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Melissa Olenick from the Central Lake County Joint Action Water Agency and my former co-host for one episode, Carolyn Grieves. So thank you both for coming down.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So Melissa, coming from Central Lake County in Northern Illinois, working at the water agency, how did you get the opportunity to go to Germany to just experience water and wastewater over there?
I actually was given this wonderful opportunity by being a part of ISAWWA and being on the executive board. So I think my connections and volunteering and being a part of the section is what really opened the doors to be able to join in this delegation.
So for those of our listeners who don't know what ISAWWA is, it is the Illinois section of the American Water Works Association. And how long have you been a part of the association in a volunteer role, but also in a board role?
I have been volunteering for over 10 years.
Okay.
And I have been on the board of directors for, it'll be now 6 years.
Nice. Now, Carolyn, most people in the water wastewater industry know your work with the association. What's your current role with the association?
I am the director, so I represent Illinois on the association level, and then I get to bring association information back to the Illinois
From the
section.
national level.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, at Central Lake County, what are your daily roles and responsibilities that you have there that really have brought you into the water industry?
Currently, I'm the director, the operations manager
Okay.
at Central Lake County Joint Action Water Agency. I started as the laboratory supervisor and have moved up into operations.
So you've really seen all parts of water treatment. You've seen from the lab to operations, and you're able to take those experiences and now use them as an operations manager?
Yes, I starting kind of from the ground up, water quality regulations, really growing into plant operations, process control. I've really kind of got a very wide range knowledge now of treatment.
Well, and, hearing your background, and Carolyn was a water engineer still a water engineer, but, was more in the trenches on water design for many, many years. You guys then going into this volunteer role and now going to Germany. How did this trip come about? Because I just think it's cool to go to Germany. Knowing Carolyn personally, she's a world traveler. Was this your first time abroad, Melissa, or?
It was my first time abroad, so I was actually very thankful that Carolyn was going with me, and she really helped me. She was my mentor on traveling overseas, and so it was great to have somebody to go with, and felt really comfortable then being able to go over there with her.
Well, I just have to add, Melissa's a natural, handled jet lag like a pro. We had to go right from the plane to a high-speed train to get to our first city where we were meeting the delegation, and it was so great. We had a lot of fun traveling, and she's a pro. You're going to do so many more travels, I can tell.
You're not hooked. You're hooked.
Yes, I am.
So Carolyn, on the national level, and talk to us a little bit about how did this come about? Who was this sponsored by?
Yeah.
How did they pick you and Melissa to go to Germany? How did this all come about?
Well, we're glad we got picked. So the German American Chamber of Commerce is the Midwest portion of this chamber is located in Chicago.
Okay.
So they reached out to Illinois section actually 2 years ago, and we're looking for somebody from the executive board or the leadership of the section to be involved with a conference they were having out there. And I immediately put my hand up. That conference ended up getting canceled. So they decided to do this delegation trip now 2 years later. So they reached back out to the section and said, anybody from the leadership interested interested, we'd love to have some representatives. And both Melissa and I went, yes, please. Let's do it.
So there was no hesitation on either of your parts.
No.
This is a once in a lifetime.
Definitely no
Yes.
hesitation.
So, you say that you went with the delegation. Who was in that delegation, and was it all engineers? Was it more all operations? Who was part of that delegation, and how did everybody get brought together?
It was Midwest based, and so we had representation from Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Colorado. Probably the majority was Colorado,
big
but
Colorado
Illinois was
contingency.
second.
Yeah.
And what we found out during the travels was I think the majority of them were civil engineers. And so
Okay.
Yeah.
quite a few civil engineers, but a very broad range of specialties. So some people were more energy efficiency focused, stream water. There was one who was
Yeah.
river water,
Yeah.
stream based. Some were treatment.
We had a public works director that was
Yes.
on the team, a broad variety. So a little bit of background from everything. And we saw water, wastewater, water resources, stormwater facilities.
So it was
kind of
the
a-
whole gamut.
Yeah.
Yes.
So was the overall goal of this to bring water industry professionals from the States and water industry professionals from Germany together to share ideas and really learn about each other?
It was transatlantic collaboration is what they were.
I like
kinda-
it.
Yeah.
countering. And really, it was the funding. Ironically, was
It was
from
fascinating.
it was from World War II. And so after World War II, Germany was had put aside funding for transatlantic communication or collaboration between America and Germany. And so this is money from that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
part of this trip was funded from that bucket of money, which was really nice. And then we got a lot of support from the Illinois section to go.
So before we get into the trip,
Yeah.
I want to know, before the trip, your first time going abroad, your 100th, what were you most excited about? What were you nervous about? You're going to see infrastructure and in another part of the world. What were those things you were most excited about?
The most excited thing for me was the culture. I really wanted to experience German culture and kind of really immerse myself in the culture. But second would have been seeing a water treatment plant. I love touring water treatment plants. And I actually, when I go on vacation, I will still tour water treatment plants. It's an embarrassing fact. But I like to go see other plants. So to see a water plant in Germany, I was very excited to see just how much it differed and how it was the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to admit, I was very fortunate. I've been to Germany before. So I had a cultural expectation of going there, but I didn't have a clue what people felt about their industry, the water. So what does an average German resident think about water or wastewater? So I was really interested to learn more about that and the technology as well, getting to see some of the plants and seeing some of the different approaches that they take from a bigger holistic perspective was really interesting. So I was excited to learn what residents think about water.
Well, I'm going to follow up on that because
Yeah.
here in the States, I think one of our biggest, one of the biggest goals and one of the biggest things that we're always working on in the water industry is public perception and public education, and showing the value of water, the cost of water, the importance of water. When you went to Germany, what was that perception? What was it? Was it the same as here? Was it totally different vibe?
I would say, if you don't mind me jumping in, I would say very similar in that the out of sight, out of mind type of approach that we've had here for many, many years. There was a lot of conversation when we started this trip about some major climate issues that they've had in Germany, some major flooding. There were deaths from flooding. So there was really big concern that really addressing what the climate needs are and how to make sure plants were energy neutral, self-sustaining. So a lot of this came from just realizing that they have to take care of their environment. So that was so inspiring to me, like all of the leadership, the operators, and how they really wanted to take care of their environment. But there still felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect to what people understand about what these people are doing, taking care of the environment. So that still existed.
So truly,
Yeah.
halfway around the world,
Yes.
public perception of water, wastewater, stormwater, it's still a challenge.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll just add a fun fact. So we calculated this when we were there. They were saying that the average German resident uses 30 gallons per person per day, compared to here in the U.S., we're at about 80 gallons per
Right.
person per day. So a lot more efficient in a lot of the way they use water. The other thing we discovered is there still is a bottled water component in Germany. I mean, every restaurant we went to, we
Yes.
tried to order tap water.
We couldn't.
We couldn't get it.
We couldn't get tap water.
Yeah, so
Wow.
there's this cultural element of just being used to using that, because for many years they didn't have the high level of technology they have now. So they're kind of in a transition period. So it was interesting to see that.
So that's good that this
Yeah.
communication, and hopefully, maybe you guys go back in 5-10 years and see
Sure.
the differences that are being made, which would be cool.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, what is one of the most memorable site visits you went on? I know you guys went on a ton. I followed along via pictures on social media. But talk about that one that you just will always remember.
So the one that really sticks with me, and I'm going to butcher, but it's the Sylvestine Dam project.
Okay.
So ironically, it was a dam, but it was very unique. It was a dam that it's over 50 years old, and they had problem with sealing and weepage of the dam, and so they had this very intricate engineering project where they had to dig down into the tunnel and put in an entire seepage system, seal it, and put in a seepage system that would then measure the flow. So
Okay.
it was very interesting. We learned about it, but then we actually got to go into the tunnel. And that was the part that I loved the most. So
That was
we
crazy.
went down into the ground
Yeah.
and walked all the way through the bottom of the dam and
Whoa.
got
Yeah.
to experience that. And it was just amazing to see. Freezing,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
cold,
Yeah.
but absolutely amazing. And then we saw all the technology where they were measuring the seepage, and they were able to then channel it down and measure the total flow then that was leaking out of this dam.
And the engineer that designed that job or led that job
Yes.
came and gave us the tour. So he took his time out to come over for that. So that was really great.
And he was in full
lederhosen.
So
Okay,
it was
I
such a
saw
treat.
I saw those pictures, so
Yeah,
I
it
was great.
appreciate
Yes.
that.
Great.
So, Carolyn, obviously Melissa went with a water resource or a stormwater
Yeah.
project. What was your most memorable project?
Mine was the Munich drinking water supply. So that was our very last stop. And that one kind of blew my mind for a couple of reasons. First, and we met a lot of fantastic people, a lot of great operators, but it was the first woman operator that
Okay.
gave the presentation. So it was really great just to have that connection with her. But then they started building that water supply in the late 1800s, which kind of is crazy.
Yeah.
And they bring water from the Alps,
Okay.
so the Bavarian Alps, to these massive, I mean, you can't even, the scope and the scale of the wells that receive the water from the Alps was kind of like mind-blowing. But then there's no treatment. The only treatment they do is UV disinfection before it goes to the residents. It was over 1 million residents in Munich. They pride themselves of it being pure water from the Alps. And I have to say it was delicious.
I mean, that's absolutely
Yes.
incredible. That's
Yes.
mind blowing to me.
Yes.
And they only use UV during the summertime
Yeah.
when conditions
Yeah.
could be.
When they need it.
yeah. So
That's-
they literally turn it off.
Yeah.
That's absolutely crazy.
Yes.
From a water
Yes.
Yes,
professional,
yes,
We kept asking nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So, that kind of gets me in a topic that, I'm really interested in is in the United States, myself and Carolyn have had this conversation hundreds of times, is the ever-changing regulations. Did you guys have a chance to talk about regulations on the water, wastewater industry in Germany? First of all, who is the governing agency? And then did you talk about the challenges of regulations?
A little bit. We were really fortunate at the start of the whole tour, so it was 5 days. We got to sit down with a large group, and there were some representatives that shared a lot of information. And we learned that the European Union is part of the regulation. So about 80% of the regulations come from the European Union.
Okay.
But then Germany also adds their own regulations as well. And similar to the U.S., the different, I don't know if it was counties or districts can add regulations on top as well. So like the states
Yep.
here. So there are a lot of different levels, but the thing that was the most interesting to me is they were moving forward on treatment processes, even though the regulations weren't in place yet, because it was what they knew they needed to do.
So before
like,
regulations were in place,
Yes.
they're already
They're
during the
already
treatment.
looking out for PFAS, pharmaceuticals, microplastics. You know, they're already starting to implement a lot of those treatment processes, even though they know the regs don't really start yet, but they're coming.
Okay. One more on that, just
Mm-hmm.
follow up. And obviously, Carolyn, the podcast me and you did together was about water rates.
Yes.
So what does water cost? Did you guys talk about that? What is the cost of water in Germany to the average homeowner?
We did, and I was going to calculate it before this session, but
It
I
was
forgot.
very hard
Yeah.
because everything's in liters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not gallons
Yeah.
anymore. And it was very, that was probably the biggest hurdle, was trying to get their measurements to compare to the US. And I think as a delegation, everybody kept struggling. Everyone was trying to run calculations.
Everybody had their pocket calculators out.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it was difficult, and it seemed the one time we did calculate it in one of our plants, it seemed comparable to the cost
Yeah.
here, but in another one it was a little higher.
Okay.
And so it was a variable that we had a hard time with.
Well, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I'd pay premium for Swiss Alps water or
German.
German Alps water. So moving on to the wastewater side, phosphorus is an issue across the world. Talk a little bit about. I've been talking to you both beforehand about phosphorus recovery, and what did you learn about the phosphorus recovery in Germany?
So that was a really interesting, and I'm not as familiar with the wastewater side from my background, but that was really interesting that they, as a country, have to import phosphorus for using for fertilizer and for other resources. So it's a huge expense for them to bring phosphorus in. I think Africa and there was another country they get phosphorus from. So they now realize that they have a resource with wastewater plants.
Yeah.
So a couple things. They do not allow the sludge from wastewater plants to go on fields. So all of the sludge is incinerated.
Okay.
And then they have phosphorus recovery facilities from the ash from the incinerated sludge. And they regenerate this phosphorus then to be used in other resources. So back to adding into fertilizer or animal feed and other places where
So
they
it's
use it.
truly a cyclical
Yeah.
use of phosphorus
Yeah.
and getting as much use out of it as possible.
Yes, and the investment they've made into these incineration facilities, they feel is a worthwhile investment because it saves them from having to purchase phosphorus
Yeah.
from far away countries.
Especially the cost of shipping
yeah.
and getting it there.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. So again, every plant was so self-sustaining, and then creating products that were used in other places in Germany was really interesting.
You talk about self-sustaining. Are things like alternative power and those being utilized there?
Oh yeah.
I think that was probably the most eye-opening, is just how they were way ahead of the United States in terms of that. I mean, they were recovering power. They were in the drinking water treatment plant. They were taking out the hardness, and they were basically forming a product that they were feeding to chickens to help them with their egg laying and their shells.
So the calcium, they're
Yes,
taking the
they're
calcium from the
literally
water.
trying to use everything, and their net zero concept is
Truly
ingrained
net zero.
everywhere.
Yes.
From industry, from the research facilities, from water and wastewater, everyone is shooting for net zero.
The other thing that was interesting, and it was why it was so cool traveling with Melissa, having background with the labs, is a lot of the places have not just analytical labs, but research labs. So
The individual plants.
Yes, and the individual plants would have their own research labs to look at better ways to use all of the resources, to look at ways to improve treatment processes to deal with the additional
So they're really
contaminants.
treating the water wastewater industry as a business
Yes.
and putting
Yeah.
research and development
Yes,
back into
even
it.
though the regs aren't really pushing them to do it yet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Talk about technology, and we're moving obviously the alternative energy and all the things that they're doing with recovery, but talk about some of the other ways that the German water and wastewater industry is using technologies like SCADA or AI or, monitoring. What are some of those things that you guys saw?
We were at the Wheelo
Yeah.
research, or at their main facility, and they are a pump manufacturer. Their entire facility, from the time you entered the grounds, it was a campus, and from the time you entered, you knew that they had been embracing technology.
It's amazing.
It blew my mind. Just when we walked in, they had a wall of LED lights that showed an entire commercial. They have TV. They actually show like sports games sometimes on one side. And then when we went on the inside, it was an entire wall that showed everything that was happening throughout their factory. And so stats and where they were manufacturing, where they were selling to. It was crazy how advanced it was. And then they took us through the little tour of the factory, and they were using AI in a way that I hadn't seen yet. And so they had autonomous forklifts moving around. They had carts that were moving products so people didn't have to lift anything. And those carts were traveling down the line. And they were using AI to find mistakes. So as their workers were putting together pumps, if they were to make a mistake at a process, they would basically run it through the computer. The computer would tell them when that mistake happened. And then they were tracking those mistakes not to reprimand their employees, but to correct the directions, because clearly then there's a problem with their directions. And so they were optimizing their performance using AI.
Wow.
And it was just kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was amazing. At the other facility we went to a research facility
yes.
that was looking at different ways to just handle what the current challenges are with German infrastructure. The other thing they mentioned was similar to the States is they're also facing a silver tsunami of workforce retirement. So they're looking at how can we use AI or SCADA or other technologies to help with workforce development. So they were a whole research facility looking at this.
That is, and you look at a country that is just so on the forefront. They're making strides, and it's a country that we look at. The reason they have this is because of World War II. So such a world-changing moment is now putting money to get ahead of the game. It's really, to go from that to now all the AI, it's really a generational difference.
Yes.
So obviously you mentioned at the beginning, part of this was, you went over there was because they had huge floods and issues with flooding. What were some of those things you saw? I know you mentioned the dam project, but with climate resilience and flood protection, getting away from the water, wastewater, but just protecting the environment.
So the facility that comes to my mind, and we swore we weren't going to use names on this podcast because we don't know the German words as well.
You guys showed
But
me one, and there's no chance.
There was a facility, but the short term, the word they used it for, was the Escher facility. So this was a little bit of a combo of wastewater and water resources, but they used to have open channels where wastewater went to, that just went to the river. So over the past 50 years, they've been working on transferring the open channels to sanitary sewer system. But then by doing that, they were able to really address the stormwater and water resources facilities. And there was this amazing park that was, when did they complete that? Really pretty recent, the past few years, this amazing park where that used to be where kind of wastewater got discharged to, that they now have as a natural resources. That is an area where people can go for a walk, and there's all these beautiful plantings, and they're really able to move the stormwater that comes from these channels now into more directed and focused areas to protect.
And useful spaces.
Useful spaces, beautiful spaces. They had a farm, where folks could come and they would end up selling their
Special
produce
needs
there.
people
Special
were
needs.
working the farms.
I mean, it's just so many thoughtful moments.
They let farmers basically use the land for free as long as they take care of it. The idea is they can take the yields.
Yeah.
So they were really using their resources well there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, I want to turn to you, and being a member of a utility, you guys had mentioned previously that, there's a lot of collaboration between German utilities. What are some of those things that are happening in Germany where the utilities are collaborating, and what are those things we could bring here?
I feel like without using the terminology, they're embracing regionalization more than we are. And that's the kind of the basic message I felt is they are looking at kind of tying in all of their wastewater systems, putting that money into that infrastructure and using regionalization in both treatment and in both drinking water and wastewater,
Okay.
where I don't think we're really embracing that over here as much.
Was it just regionalization in terms, or regionalization in terms of using the plant, or information and technology and ideas?
I think it's probably not so much technology, but more just the plant, in the process.
Okay.
There was one where it was a lake, and they were fixing the wastewater structure all the way around the lake, and this lake then served all the towns then go into it. So it's benefiting the towns by fixing this, right? And that seemed to be the message. It's like, okay, let's, that the Escher restoration project was the same thing. It was miles and miles. I think it was over, 3,600 miles?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So this is big, and they're trying to put a lot of money into it to help a large area, not just...
So collaboration through many communities.
And I think they're looking at projects from that bigger perspective.
Right.
How to make sure they're looking at it for the future, not just for the next 5 years.
Right.
I really felt that when we were there. The one other thing I wanted to add that I thought was really interesting in terms of collaboration, back to the Munich water supply, is they were paying farmers not to use nitrogen and phosphorus and to do organic farming. So the water supply was paying farmers to minimize the use of those nutrients so it would not get into the...
So they're keeping their water supply cleaner.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you guys see, we talked at the beginning of this conversation about, how did you guys feel that the public perception was of the municipalities and the workers in the water industry, but what public outreach was there in Germany? What did they do? And was there anything that you want to bring back and say, I want to try this?
The one water plant we were at when we were touring, I think they had 3 other tours going on at the same time. And so they were very, very active in terms of bringing groups in and touring the facility. And they had a great outreach. In their lobby, there was a display, and it showed how many liters per second they were producing, what their kilowatt saved was, and what their CO2 was. And so it was this digital display. It was really impressive to see it. And then knowing that they were bringing all these people in and basically showing them water treatment. We didn't really get the sense that there was outreach happening outside of that. I don't know. They don't seem to be very big in terms of social media.
Yeah.
That was kind of the takeaway we got. They are not into kind of, that part of public perception where we're going to put this all over social media, but they're very open to coming in and seeing their facilities. We were at the one dam structure, and it was a restaurant.
Yeah.
And
So it's about public trust. They want the public to come in. They want to see the transparency. Come look at and see what we're doing, how your water is clean. That's
open
awesome.
door feeling.
And I had commented on there still is a bottled water culture there, but looking at a lot of the facilities that we went to, they are trying to help promote that. Hey, again, we're Bavarian Alps here, drinking water. This is great. So they are trying to promote. If you look at all their websites, they talk about how it can save you from having to lift heavy bottles of water, and so they're just trying to start chipping away at that long-term culture.
Yeah.
That's the start. So, what was just one surprising thing that each of you learned?
For me, it was their very limited use of disinfectant.
Okay.
It was sort of a hard thing for me.
We really couldn't wrap our heads around that for a while, and maybe still can't.
And I mean, in the drinking water, in the wastewater, it just was not that final step. And the only time they used it as an emergency, it's kind of like, okay, the water quality's gotten really bad. Now let's put some disinfectant in, where we use it as this protection.
Yeah.
And we did speak with a couple people there who said when they come to the United States, they do not like our water because of the chlorine.
They do not like chlorine taste.
So it is very different over there. They want to taste minerals. They don't want to taste disinfectant. But it was a hard one for me to wrap my head around, because we're kind of, my feeling is, right, that disinfectant keeps the water safe. So it's really hard. It's definitely a cultural thing, and they just are not into disinfectant. And the only time, even on the wastewater level, that somebody was using chlorine, one of their treatment processes, it was because they are discharging to what they call a bathing area, which is basically a beach.
Yes.
And only when that beach is open. So basically only in the summertime when the temperature is warm enough to be swimming, will they have to add any kind of disinfectant as the water goes into the lake.
That's mind blowing. Like
Yes.
as a water operator and a water professional, that's
Yeah.
that'd be just. I'm gonna be mind blown for that for like the next week.
They were very clear though. Things are getting tested. You know, they're
Yes.
they're following processes and everything. It's just they just
That's
don't
that
need
clean.
it.
Yeah. So, Carolyn, I'll start with you. If you could sum up this trip in 3 words, what are they?
Amazing, inspiring, and it really, I know this is more than the third word, but it really reinstated how much I just think operators are the best group of people in the world. I felt that all the operators we met were just so humble about what they were doing and the technologies that they were applying. And I'll never forget one operator in particular we met who was just so creative, and he was surprised that we were interested in what he had to say. So I would say just, again, operations is where it's at. It was very inspiring.
Melissa, your 3?
I would say transformative,
Okay.
forward thinking, and just amazing.
I mean, hearing you guys talk about it, it's really. I want to go. Now I'm trying to weave my way into something over there. But no, is there anything you guys want? In summing up and wrapping up the conversation, is there anything that you guys really wanted to make sure that our listeners hear and really understand from you guys?
I just want to I do want to take a moment just to thank the German American Chamber for inviting us on this trip and being wonderful hosts. They were so great at taking care of us, and everywhere we went, we met more folks from the local chambers that came to make sure we were happy and feeling well taken care of. I felt so supported and so welcomed in the country. It was an amazing trip, and I guess my takeaway is you see any of these opportunities come your way, go for it.
Yes.
Grab it. Go on the tour.
To what Melissa said, volunteer, volunteer,
Yes,
volunteer, and you'll get these
yes.
opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for coming. I've learned a ton. I think this is amazing. It is a truly once in a lifetime experience that you both had the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Mark.
this conversation with Melissa and Carolyn, I'm actually blown away by the amount of new things that I was able to learn and the different processes across the world, and how no matter whether you're in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, or any other part of the world, water and clean water and water treatment, wastewater treatment, and how we protect our environment is just so important, and we want to make sure that we can leave our land better for the next generation. If you liked our conversation today, like, subscribe, listen again. These episodes come out the first Tuesday of the month. And for our entire team here at Baxter Woodman, have a great day.